Hello and welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. And this week we have a special report surrounding tariffs, where I give a brief historical context, explain what the hell's going on, and give you an insight why Bitcoin might be a safe haven asset. Okay, let's start with the history lesson here a bit. We did hear the announcement on the 2nd of April about the tariff infringements that Trump is now going to introduce. There are countless ideas for countless countries, and the idea behind tariffs is, in theory, that you actually strengthen the inner market of a country. If you see a deficit in certain industries or with certain goods, you can actually make up for it by introducing tariffs. People from the outside come in and strengthen the labor market within. This is not the first time that has happened, because tariffs have actually a historical context all the way up to the Greek antiques, where they had tariffs on a flat rate basis for farming and other goods you used in everyday situations. And even in America, we did see an historical context for tariff. George Washington introduced a 5% tariff for farming, and this moved up and down towards the centuries, even into the First World War and after the First World War, where the recession hit and tariffs on imported goods to again strengthen farming had to be implemented. In theory, if tariffs work out, this is obviously a great way to strengthen the labor market, to introduce new and exciting businesses, and to really put your own country first, which again, in theory, is what at least the Trump administration has been promising in its campaigning. However, in today's world, where we live on a much more global scale, where it's not that everyone in the country is driving the cars that are being produced in the country, or even heck buy stuff that we use in everyday situations. Some countries don't have the opportunity, for example, to grow pears, so they have to import them, or kiwis or avocado, whatever it is. So you have a much more global approach. Tariffs, by the way, also exist in Europe, but we have a different concept of actually applying them, rather than what the US is doing now, where you just go, okay, you have these tariffs, you now need to do X, Y, and Z, and you need to pay that up front. We actually let goods and services or companies come into the economic zone, and then through various regulations and checks, they actually have to pay certain taxes instead of a tariff. However, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. If you want to see an example of this, try buying an American car, shipping it over to Europe, and actually driving it right away. That will not be possible. You have to pay certain import taxes. You have to even do certain changes to the car, and you have to pay a certain tariff on the actual amount of the car. In Trump's eyes, this is not fair towards the American economy, because they are the world reserve currency and they always help everyone out. So now it's time that everyone gets back to it. And he really started using these tariff announcements as a negotiation tactic. And from that perspective, it did work, because many countries started actually sitting down on the table. Some gave up immediately and said, like, yes, we're not going to do tariffs on your goods anymore. Please also don't do any on ours. And they will somehow meet in the middle and also determine a flat rate. Other countries or other political institutions, such as the EU, have actually agreed on certain zero for zero policies for industry goods, but maybe not others. So there's definitely a lot of negotiation going on. And many experts anticipated that that was the reasoning behind the tariffs. Now, this week, we've seen a 90-day tariff stop, where Trump is actually not imposing any tariffs on any other countries anymore. And this was really good for financial markets, because up until now, with every tariff announcement, everything, and I'm talking equities, bonds, everything was dropping like a hot stone. But there was one more hope, and that was Bitcoin, because for a short period of time, when new tariffs were announced and we had a wipeout on Monday, Bitcoin actually held its ground quite steadily, anywhere between 81,000 to 83,000 US dollars. And for a brief period, when everything was in deep blood red on equities front, you actually saw Bitcoin performing quite well in its own right, even closing out with green days. There was then a second day where another major tariff was announced, and a lot of fear was speaking around a recession in the US. Naturally, if you actually nuke the whole market, you have to anticipate that there could be a recession coming in. And that's where Bitcoin corrected itself a bit. However, it quickly rebounded, and it continues to be a safe haven for a lot of investors. That is not me just saying that. Bitwise CIO is actually also saying this, because they've realized that Bitcoin, just like gold, for example, who's also been ripping during this time and reaching new all-time highs, if detached from central entities and central instructions like these tariff announcements. And this could be a huge opportunity for Bitcoin and especially investors to realize, hang on a minute, this weird internet currency, at least that's how it's being displayed by them, is actually performing and a little bit decoupling from what we've seen with other markets. While my equity in company X is just tanking, why should I not move in portion of my portfolio into Bitcoin and see how that performs in the long run? And considering now that we have a stop where everything rebounced, including Bitcoin, and the only countries going back at it is China and the US, and they're sort of apping themselves up on new tariff announcements, you would potentially see a future where a lot of people go like, you know what? I don't have the patience and I don't have really the nerves to do this whole tariff war. Let me just allocate towards Bitcoin and see if it sticks. By the way, we've also seen the biggest liquidation waves in hedge funds since the pandemic in 2020. And not surprisingly, Bitcoin held up quite nicely there as well. So considering that all in all, in the world, there is this craziness going on with tariffs, and it's just an uncertainty we haven't seen before, Bitcoin is standing out. This could actually be a golden opportunity for the network to really show how strong it is and what you can do with it. But what do you think? Are these tariffs now just a temporary thing? Is the potential of a recession good or bad for Bitcoin? So far, it looks like it's holding up quite steadily compared to other assets. Or is this whole thing over in a few months and it was basically just a negotiation tactic by the US? Let me know in the comment below. And if you've not yet subscribed and you want to get more news like this, you can also sign up for our newsletter. Link is also below, or subscribe here on our YouTube channel. I look forward to seeing you next week at the same time and the same place again.